Today's episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and join the conversation at thehippocratic-collective.com. Hello, I'm Joan. I'm a Canadian family physician who also works as a restorative medical educator, facilitator, and coach. I create spaces that rehumanize the work of healthcare. I'm creating this podcast to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that when you are working and caring for your human patients, you are the other human in the room. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to remind you that Creating Space, my coaching course and retreat, is open for registration and enrollment now. I am so excited that folks are signing up for spending 6 months with me online and then 4 days with me in person at a spa retreat later on this year. And I want you to be in there. So head to joanchanmd.com/space and book a call with me. You get to chat with me by phone, learn if this program is right for you. So head to joanchanmd.com/space. I can't wait to talk to you and invite you into Creating Space. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. So, this episode is a very special episode. It's become an annual tradition here on The Other Human in the Room for me to record my year in review in June of every year, because 3 years ago now, I started this podcast. If you can believe it, I cannot believe it. I've been doing this for 3 whole years. And I've really enjoyed recording these episodes where I look back on the past year and just reflect on everything that's happened in my life. As you know, when you listen to my podcast, it says right at the beginning that I'm primarily recording this podcast for myself, to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that you are the other human in the room. And I really love these as time capsules about what's happened. I do think, though, they can have some benefit to those also who want to tune in. First of all, in case you're curious about what I've been up to, that's fun. But also, I hope they act as a kind of inspiration. I'm one of many examples of what's possible when you start to prioritize your humanity and make space for humanity in healthcare. And, you know, your experiences that you might want to be having may differ from mine. But please know that if there's things that you've been dreaming about, experiences you've been daydreaming for years of having, what if they could actually happen to you? Because that's a bit of the theme of this past year, was like a bunch of my dreams coming true, as well as all of the delicious connective tissue, ordinary moments in between them that actually were just as delicious as those like major highlight tentpole experiences. So that's kind of how I want to go through this episode. I usually record 3 of these, right? Like I usually have one for clinical, one for personal, one for restorative medical education podcasting. But honestly, those all feel so intertwined and blended at this point. So I'm just going to record one. I don't know if it's going to be super long or not. I have a list of things I want to talk about. And so let's get to it and see how long this is. So I thought I'd start with the tent poles, sort of the huge new things that have happened in my life that I have co-created to make possible in my life over this past year, that I honestly still am like pinching myself, like, that actually happened. I actually helped make that a reality. And there's quite a number that I want to share with you. Some of which you've heard of before, but I'd love to just capture them all in one place. And really, when I was looking back, I looked back in my calendar and I realized all these things happened in the last calendar year. I was like, whoa, what a year it's been. So the first one I wanted to talk about was my second podcast that I started making in the fall of last year, called Experiential Anatomy. Did you know I had a second podcast? I've talked about it a few times, but on this podcast. But yeah, since last fall, I've been co-creating and releasing this podcast that's all about embodiment, all about my relationship with my body and my co-host Jamie Lee Finch's relationship with her body, and also our relationships to the bodies that we take care of in our various corners of healthcare. And the whole idea that I even have this as a real thing that's happening, like truly, speaking of daydreams, like since I first heard of the idea of embodiment and read books about it and really started to intentionally develop a relationship with my body, this idea came into my mind of like, oh man, it would have been so amazing if in medical school, alongside the sort of like more theoretical and clinical kinds of anatomy where I learned on other people's bodies and organs, what if there was also an experiential anatomy component where everyone, like part of the curriculum is like, notice that you have a heart. How does your heart feel day to day? You know? And so then I started working with Jamie as my embodiment coach for a while. And I loved our conversations. And I like took the chance of sending her this voice memo being like, would you want to make a whole podcast with me? And I had no idea if she would say yes or no. Jamie's very, thoughtful about what she does with her time, and she's got many things she could do with her time. So the fact that it was such a clear yes, it was like a total dream come true moment. And the whole process of making it has been so incredible. We have like a professional production team that helps make it. So if you ever struggle with the audio quality of this podcast and wish that you could hear what I sounded like if I had like professional audio producers, feel free to listen to that one, because there's like music and the transitions, and it's really beautifully produced. And the whole ethos of the project has been like from an embodiment lens. Like, so we're not going to rush things. We're not going to put out more content than we have capacity for. We've had 2 concrete seasons with a specific number of episodes, a lot of space in between. Like the whole project has been one of those like fully integrity, values aligned things where like the thing that we're teaching is the way that we're making it, and that makes the whole thing better. And yeah, having conversations and really getting to know Jamie on a deeper level has been amazing, because she's someone I've admired from afar for so long before I ever met her. And also, like with her, I've gotten to meet a couple other cool people that we had on to interview this past season, including someone who is absolutely also like a hero of mine, Hillary McBride, who I've had on this podcast once. And there's something about like when I was having a podcast conversation with Jamie Lee Finch and Hillary McBride, I was like, what is happening? How is this my life? These are 2 people who I listened to on other podcasts at deeply formative times in my life when I felt so lost and so alone, and their words helped me. And now I am co-creating something that I hope helps someone else in that same way. Yeah, that's my life now. And we're still going, like we're still making more podcasts. We have a cool Substack where we do like off-season content for people who want to pay to help fund the podcast. I am planning in that space to have a whole episode where I explain Taylor Swift to her, because she knows who Taylor Swift is, but she's not like a deep fan like I've become. And so I'm really looking forward to that one. And we've had really great conversations there. So I mean, that has been not just one experience, but a whole set of experiences that has been so foundational for this year in how it's felt so alive with possibility, and a whole other set of people that I hope that I'm reaching and impacting beyond folks in healthcare. Because like this podcast is for folks in healthcare primarily, though if you listen and you're not from healthcare, of course you're welcome. But that one's like for anyone in a body, including like patients could go and listen to that one and have it be directly relatable to their experience, So that's been the first of many amazing things that's happened. The second amazing thing that's happened that I'm including on this list is the Eras Tour. And I'm not going to go in a ton of detail about that because I have a whole other episode debriefing my experience going to the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. But the one thing I'll say is that I mentioned in that debriefing episode that I kept having this sense of like, I'm here listening to this song live now, but I was also really feeling connected to all like the past versions of myself who had listened to this song before in different settings, and like actually pictured myself like high-fiving them and be like, hey, self listening to All Too Well 10 in the kitchen, like I'm high-fiving you there because I'm here now. And what I'll say is like since that time, often when I'm listening to a Taylor song or having an experience that reminds me of something to do with the Eras Tour, I will like visually high five myself from the future, like back on that time. And it's just a very fun experience to know that like something that sometimes what happens is like you have a fun experience and then it's like so sad that it's over and you miss it. But like even the missing it means you're still there. Like there's something about like holding on to the fact that you always will have that sense memory inside of you. Hold on to the memories and they will hold on to you. Taylor Swift lyric, period. And like I'm just doing that with the Eras Tour and with everything that led up to that tour and all that's meant about bringing music back into my life, bringing creative expression into my life, bringing like ambitious concepts of how much you can impact the world into my life, because all of those things are who Taylor is to me. And so I got to see Taylor Swift in person this past year and sing along to her and have amazing secret songs and all that good stuff. So that happened this past year. Another amazing, like sort of, I'm starting with like the people that I admire that I interacted with. So, you know, Jamie, made a podcast with her. Taylor, didn't meet her, but was in the same room as her. Another person who I like admire deeply that again, I'm like, I can't believe I got to meet this person, have dinner with this person, do a workshop facilitated by this person, and then have this person on my podcast. And that was sort of the order of it. But Padraig Otuma, like he's like another celebrity to me. I love his poetry podcast so much. His conversations about conflict that he had on Krista Tippett's podcast On Being were hugely influential to me as someone who's always been so afraid of conflict, and just like the way he speaks about things and the beauty with which he speaks is so inspiring to me. After doing this workshop that he facilitated, it was about poetry, and I shared something really meaningful about my relationship with my mom in that, and that was a really healing experience. I talk about a bunch about it in Experiential Anatomy on the first season, so if you want to listen to that, like I get into that in detail, but like having those happen with this person that I admired, even the fact like I got to have dinner with him, not one-on-one, but like a small group, like maybe there was 10 of us, and it was because I was technically kind of on the planning committee to bring him to McMaster University, which is where I'm faculty. And the only reason that I was partially a part of planning that and therefore at this dinner was because I put out this podcast. And then the person who planned that was like, hey, I love your podcast. Do you want to come do these other talks for me? And then now you're in my circle. Like me having no idea the impact of what would happen when I started doing this thing for myself, just because it felt like something that I needed to express in me, which is this podcast. It's still having incredible dividends in my own life, much less the impact I can't even imagine it has in other people's lives. Like it brings cool people that I love into my life, and I get to meet them and have them on the podcast. And like, oh my gosh, that is so special. And getting to having him offer a whole hour of his time to sit down for my podcast, so grateful for it, and such a rich conversation that has even now led then to someone else reaching out to me to create a whole keynote that's about conflict, which I'm so looking forward to the experience of creating. Like it just keeps happening. You put your magic out into the world, you believe in your magic, you learn to love yourself and the magic that you have to offer, and magical things flow back to you. That's like, I would say if I was like one word to describe this past year, it would be magic. And like, that is one example of it for sure. Some other things that happened this past year is a shift in my roles in, speaking of McMaster University, my roles in how I'm going to be faculty there. Part of it is sad and hard, which is that I am choosing to leave this piece of the family medicine curriculum that I've been a part of for like 8 years and was like one of the local leaders of, called MHBS. And it's like this small group facilitated teaching weekly where you're with the residents and you follow them through their whole 2 years and you get to know them in a really special way. And I'm choosing to leave because it feels like it's time to go. And I'm still really sad about it. Like actually today is going to be my very last group with my very last group before then we do evals and we send them off. And like, I'm going to tear up at some point, whether it's with them or after or something. It's just like this course and being a part of it has meant so much to me. And I know it's time to go, you know, and I can't even fully explain how I know it. other than I was getting some early signals of like impatience with it, like things where it's like, I don't want to have to wait to hate it before I move on from it. And so I'm moving on. And one of the things I'm moving on to that I've actually already started is being a primary preceptor for family medicine residents. So now for the past year, I've had this family medicine resident training to be like, full family doctor in my office with me, following me, and then seeing my patients. And that's been like a huge adjustment. And actually it's had its own challenges like time management and like figuring out workflow and figuring out how to give feedback that's meaningful and like how much is like over supervising versus under supervising. And I'm definitely still figuring it out, but it's been so meaningful to develop this like longitudinal relationship and watch someone grow in their confidence and learn how to be an effective like coach and mentor to them. And like just share life with this other person that now is going to like go on and be a colleague. Like how cool is that? And now I have a new person coming to start. So I'm going to have a first year and a second year, and that's going to be like one per year. So a total of 2 at a time in our clinic. And that just feels really fun and is a whole new way of teaching that I haven't had the opportunity to do before. Honestly, because I had way too much imposter syndrome about not knowing enough and not being a good enough teacher. But I've learned that imposter syndrome is truly just a shame-based fake story, and that I do have things to share, including the fact that I don't know things and that we like look up stuff together all the time. And then she teaches me things and I'm like, thank you so much. Like it's amazing. And I do have things to teach her and offer her as well. And, that has been so fun. So those are 2 ongoing, like saying goodbye to MHBS has been sort of a sad, slow thing as I had that whole episode about transition plans. Like I've definitely been having a transition plan and all the extra energy that takes up, but it feels good. And then becoming a preceptor and all of that's going to hold. And I look forward to hopefully many more years of that. I could see that being a regular part of my career. Another space that's like related to healthcare, only in that they're all physicians in the group, is this past year, I was part of a group of female physicians in Canada who formed a brand new online choir. You may have heard me talking about an online choir as a part of last year around this time. Sadly, that choir ended. The organization didn't end, but the online component, they didn't have capacity to continue it. And so then a bunch of us were sort of left stranded after having these like wonderful experiences, meeting these other female physicians and bonding with them and singing with them and sharing joy and delight with them. So we made our own. We made our own board and we found our own choir director and we like organized it and promoted it. And like, we actually just had a board meeting about it last night, reflecting back on the year and how successful it was. Not even just like we paid the bills of it, which like we did, which was good. But that, I mean, no one's making money off of this. This is like purely for joy. But like more than that, like every single time I go to these board meetings, like they're the opposite of all board meetings I've been to before. Like like everyone there knows exactly why they're there. Everyone there is so excited and has so much like perfect skill to offer. We all do our part and it's such a collective whole and everyone's like, wow, how do you guys do so much? But it's like, cause we're each doing part of it and doing work we love. Like for me, I'm like the admin person. So I'm just like answering emails and scheduling calendar invites. And like, I get the sense that absolutely nobody else wants to be doing this work. And I am so happy to be doing it because it's so like relaxing to me. I love a spreadsheet. I love a system. And I don't have to be thinking about like, for me, it would be hard to like be choosing the music. I'd be like feeling stressed and pressured about that. But for me, I'm just like, I'm just writing words on emails, easy. And so like everyone's doing a part of the work that comes easily to them. And the whole is like incredible. I feel like I have so much to say about the choir. Actually, like I would love to, this is my manifesting a future episode where at least some of the board members come on and we talk about like why it works so well, because it works so well. It's incredible. And these are just, speaking of magic, like these are magical humans that I get to now spend once a week singing with on Zoom and more in, organizing in-person events and singing in person. And it's so good. So if you're a Canadian female physician and want to join, cwpchoir.com. I just made a website for it. I'll put the link in the show notes, but That's been a huge highlight. Just being a part of the creation of it and then getting to participate in it has been such a joy, and I've loved every minute. But especially the time where like I was sort of the social person for the evening, because like we have like one person host and do something kind of fun and social in the middle. And I got to teach them all the Hot to Go dance, if you know Chapel Roan's song Hot to Go. That was fun. That was a highlight of the highlights of being in that choir. Another group I was so privileged and loved being a co-facilitator of was this past year was the first year that we ran this thing through the Ontario College of Family Physicians, OCFP, called Peer Connect. This program's existed for a long time, but this was the first year that they did group sessions. So 2 family physicians co-facilitate a group of family physicians and support them by meeting once a month to support some part of their like professional development and learning. And the group that I was a part of, it was me and Sam Lavitt, who you've heard on the podcast, and we were supporting physicians who live with chronic illness and disability. And you can hear our podcast where we talk a lot about that stuff. And it like magic were in those spaces, and like really culture shifting things were said and enacted in those spaces. And I feel so passionate about my work around creating space and working under your capacity, in part because it's like, if we all actually had that as a standard, so many more physicians would feel comfortable to practice within their capacity and therefore to practice and offer care to patients. And it wouldn't look as much or full-time or whatever as it could, but who cares? Like, there are folks that have things that they wish to be giving, but because the system is so horrendously ableist, and if you're not giving like 1,000,000%, then you're like not a team player or whatever. And I'm just sick of it. And I just love that group as this reminder of like, look at these incredible healthcare humans and how valuable they are. And even though they're grappling with things like their identity and with ableism and with understanding their capacities because of how the healthcare system has trained them to forget their capacity, like it is such a privilege and a joy to watch the magic unfold as they support each other and just get to be one of the people that is supporting them. That has been a huge highlight for this past year. I'm almost done the highlights. I'm 20 minutes in already. And there's so much more to go. That's great. I love it. This year has been so full. These ones are things that like, you know, maybe I would talk about in conversation, but I'm equally excited to get to like the connective tissue stuff I'm about to talk about next, which doesn't come up as often in conversation. But before I get to that, 2 more to talk about that are like tentpole highlight experiences. One is the most recent thing that's happened and continues to be unfolding, which is that this podcast has joined a brand new physician created and physician creator podcast network, part of this bigger media company called Hippocratic Collective. And you can see, I actually just got, if you're looking on the video, here's my little podcast logo card that was part of this swag box I got from Frances May Harden, who's the main founder, and I'm just one of the co-founders of this company. And again, when you start to do like the invisible string, Taylor Swift reference, of like all of the things that had to happen to bring this into my life, it's kind of wild. Like starting the podcast, enjoying Taylor Swift, mentioning mediocrity on a podcast, having one of you listeners reach out to me, be like, read this article by this person who talked about mediocrity, who is Frances May Harden, having her on my podcast to talk about it, having a great connection. Like, and then suddenly out of the blue, she's like, hey, can we meet? I want to like talk to you about this new company I'm forming. And I'm sitting there in this meeting being like, what? I didn't know that this is exactly what I've been craving. Because one thing I will say about creating this podcast and doing this work, I've loved it so much. And there are times it's been quite lonely because you're like by yourself in your house. You're putting out these episodes and you're getting, you know, some amount of feedback on social media and stuff, but like you're not regularly talking to other people who are doing that same thing. But now I am, because now I'm in this network where we're like regularly in the group chat and we're once a month meeting to talk about like the podcasts we're creating, the social media content we're creating. Like these are other physicians who also love impacting healthcare, impacting our fellow colleagues through these kind of creative endeavors and others, right? I'm sure you've noticed I've had a bunch of them on this podcast, and like it has inspired me so much to be amongst them. And I just the whole notion of being a part of a collective, I think about that all the time for all of us that we're a part of this collective, and to have this subset of people who are like already intentionally, loudly, successfully creating to support themselves and folks in healthcare for healthcare to feel more human. I still can't believe I'm a part of it. It's so fun. And another major highlight for sure. And then the very last highlight I wanted to talk about, that I, again, made a whole other podcast about, so I won't get into a ton of detail, which was that this was the first year I offered Creating Space, this course, online course with the in-person retreat, and the very first time I ever hosted my own retreat. That's, you heard me debrief about it earlier this month. And just like the whole notion of everything that it took for that to come into being and what it's brought to my life, and the experience that I'll never be able to unhave now, which was having that really delicious, relaxing, restorative retreat with all of those other folks who chose to come. I know that that's an experience I want to keep repeating again and again. So those are some of my like tentpole highlights. It's like, oh, what were we up to this past year? You might list off some of those. And all of those were so meaningful. And it's sort of interesting, right? Like in the past, when I was more riddled with anxiety and believing all the inhuman stories, and at baseline, thinking I was having a fine time, but having a lot of anxiety, a lot of worries, a lot of shame stories, etc., working over capacity. What I'd sort of describe my day to day is like, oh, I got through, it was fine, it was good. And then maybe I'd have these little bursts of like an exciting moment, a nice weekend, a fun time, and they'd feel kind of like a relief and vacation and escape from my regular life, which was like low grade, not good, and sometimes really not good, But now it's interesting because like all those experiences I just shared are like ridiculous. Like I can't believe I got to do them. They were so amazing. And they weren't like relief escapes from my regular life, because my regular life, my day-to-day life feels so good on its own. Like all of the little moments of just regular existence at baseline. Of course, I feel all the different feelings, to be clear. I'm not just like in bliss and contentment every moment of the day. I feel shame, I feel anxiety, I feel guilt, I feel the feelings. But I know how to feel them. So I don't feel scared and alone whilst I feel those feelings. I'm like, hello, emotions, you are a part of me. You are my body talking to me. Let's have a conversation. And like, I feel them all the way through. And so that means that like all of these regular parts of my life technically could seem mundane, but like they feel, the quality of them on the inside is, I'm going to say delicious. I'm going to say like really delightful and lovely. And so I wanted to talk about some of those, especially, I'm going to start by talking about my relationship to some of the things that are my everyday life that have actually felt a bit more tricky. And then I'm going to also talk about things that used to feel super tricky that are feeling actually just more delightful. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is my relationship to my body. Definitely a theme over this past year that I think is related to my increasing, like two things, I think. One is my increasing visibility. So as I'm like doing more in the public sphere, more podcasts, more social media, more talks, and therefore more people like recognize me or know who I am. To be clear, the vast majority of the planet don't know who I am, but I will have people like come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, I love your podcast, like on a semi-regular occasion, which is so delightful, by the way. And I think there's been a part of my nervous system that though has gotten on edge about it. I think especially when releasing Experiential Anatomy and working with someone who's more in like the alternative health space, I've had this nervous system reaction like latently rise up in me of like, oh my gosh, what do people think of me? And a part of how that's translated is like, what do people think of how I look? What do people think of my body? And I think that has also been intense because my body over the past year has continued to age. And I am just aware I'm at a time in my life where I am aging out of the category of woman that like patriarchal society deems to be valuable. Like I'm showing more signs of age, the grays are coming in, the skin is getting wrinklier. My tummy is expanding. Gravity is having its effect on various parts of my body, like all of those things. And my ethic, my ethos, my intention is to love myself through all of that. I'm not intending to alter any of that. And no judgment if someone does, but like for me, I want to honor my body's like natural evolution. Natural is a tricky word. I don't mean it in a morally superior way. I just mean I'm ready to go on this journey with my body and see what it's all about. I'll just say that at this point. And I didn't realize how deep the socialization about body image was until it started rearing its head. I talk about it a lot on Experiential Anatomy, particularly a trip to Florida that you can go listen to if you want. But there's been times where I was really like, whoa, like what's going on? And like, I'm feeling so self-conscious about my body. And honestly, to be honest, I'm still on that journey. I've had many, many moments though of like coming back to my body and feeling pure gratitude for my body and really loving how my body feels too. Like that's like, as far as I've gotten so far is when I picture myself trying to alter my body so that my body's smaller, especially, I'm like, that makes me sad. So like there's a part of me that's like anxious. It's like, my body's too big. I'm taking up too much space. I'm FAT, like all that stuff, right? But like, then I picture like intentionally trying to make my body smaller. And I feel sad because I like that I take up space now. I like how actually powerful I feel in the size that I am. So there's like warring socialized parts in me is what I'm saying. And that has been a distraction at times. And yet I've continued to work through it, and not on my own. Like two major things that have helped me as I continue to work through that and like find my understanding and relationship to how I look and the size and shape and appearance of my body. One has been Experiential Anatomy and just like processing that with Jamie for anyone who wants to listen. And then the other place that I've done it privately is with my somatic experiencing therapist, Kristen Honey, who, by the way, was also one of the other person who gave a workshop at my retreat and is an amazing yoga teacher and embodiment teacher. And meeting with her regularly has been so important. I originally came to her because I was like, I think this visibility thing is coming up more. My relationship with my body is getting tainted by my thoughts about how people perceive me. And I just don't want to spend time imagining how other people see me. I want to spend time looking through my own eyes and seeing the world and feeling how my body feels. That's what I'd rather spend my life doing, So that's what I've been up to. And it's definitely been a theme of sort of challenge and difficulty, but worthwhile work. That's meant that I've still got to do all the things I want to do. I'm not like hiding away in shame or hyper focused on losing weight or something. I'm just like still working with my body and then actually focusing on what I want to do. The other relationship that had a similar quality where it was definitely a distraction at times, definitely produced a lot of spicy emotions and challenge, but I didn't let it hold me back. And I am grateful for the journey we went on. It's my relationship with money. In particular, because there were times this past year, though overall my revenue was higher than it's ever been. I made more dollars in my business from like clinical and podcast and teaching and all of that. There were some months because of spikes in expenses where like the money I needed to pay out was more than the money that I got in that month. And because of some of my systems, I was always fine. Like I never literally ran out of money, but like, that was really triggering and stressful for me to be like, oh my gosh, I have to dip into this. And oh my gosh, I got to hold some of this credit card or whatever. Right. And like, that really did cause a lot of intense emotions and stress, or I guess my thoughts and stories I had about the fact of that caused a lot of stories and stress. The money itself was neutral, but my stories were strong that, see, this means you're bad at money. See, this means you're irresponsible. See, this means blah, blah, blah. It would come up. I would feel the shame of it. I would look at my numbers. That was actually the good part of it, is like, I would look at my spreadsheet. I got even more intimate with my spreadsheet and really like fully became the money date practice of like sitting down once a week and having a date with myself about my money really became like ritualistic, in part because of that time of like, okay, but I actually need to like make sure I have enough money in the account. So let's recheck this month, this week, you know. But it was such a gift because now I know my numbers even better than ever. And I could always know my numbers better, I imagine. But like, I feel so much more comfortable saying my numbers out loud. In fact, I gave a whole presentation to second year family medicine residents where I shared a bunch of my actual numbers, including those numbers of last year of like, here's my revenue. I said my actual revenue, but here's my expenses. So do you see that like my take home was actually lower because of these other expenses versus past years where it was different, like to illustrate overhead basically. And that felt super vulnerable to do. But I think it's so important to talk about, you know? And I will say, so just for context, I guess, and for myself, like some of those expenses were unexpected. Some of them were expected. And the big ones that really made things tricky, thankfully, are not going to be repeated. Like a big part of the expenses that I moved, like our entire clinic moved offices. And so there was all these moving expenses and legal expenses related to that. And then another one was like an HR related matter that involved a sizable chunk of money related to my business. I'm keeping it really vague. And so those two things I hope won't happen again this year. I'm not planning to move for sure. And so some of those expenses, thankfully, will not be present on my balance sheet this year. But I'm grateful that we had the hard lessons. I personally had the hard lessons of like grappling with that. I also think it's been good, like, because those were shared costs in my workplace. I think we now are at a place where we're talking a lot more explicitly about money in a way that still feels like aligned with our values, though it's, and we're being honest about if values don't, that differ, and yet we're sort of holding space for that difference and figuring out our way through it. They feel uncomfortable. The conversations are never easy, but like they just need to happen. It's so important that they happen. And so I'm glad that we're at a space where they're happening now. And part of that's because we're like, whoa, that was like an expensive year last year, right? So we're thinking more intentionally about that. And part of what we're thinking about intentionally in that space, and then I'm also thinking about intentionally in my other spaces, is like, instead of just thinking about cutting costs, which is an important part of, you know, having more take home money, I'm also thinking about ways to increase the revenue. How can I increase the value I offer the world so that people will want to give money in exchange for it, that then I can then pay out to other people that I value in exchange for benefit, right? Like that's the system as it works now in capitalism. And so in the clinical space, one thing we've already done is like actually make our uninsured and third party fees up to what the Ontario Medical Association recommends we have them, and actually reinforce them a bit more in a way that feels equitable, but that means that we actually are charging for things instead of doing them for free. And that's been interesting to have those conversations about money with patients and the variety of stories that come up for them, talking about that with our staff and staff members who can have different levels of discomfort about money because we all have funky money stories in our heads, but trying to just explain how it's like, we don't do this work for free. Here's what we do if they can't afford it. Like, you know, no one's getting kicked out or having the bill collectors after them if they can't pay, but we charge everyone the same. And then if they can't pay, we either do a payment plan or pay what you can or something, right? But like we charge everyone the same. And that's been uncomfortable, but really useful, I'll say. And so we've been doing that in the clinical space. We're considering that block fee thing where you sign up for one of these companies that helps you manage that instead of having your staff manage it, and you do this block fee thing. I think we've deferred that conversation for the new year, but we're talking about like, are there ways to bring in more revenue into our clinic so that we can pay our staff better, so that our patients could be better cared for? Because that's like why we would talk about money, is for those reasons, right? And then also in my like podcasting, restorative medical education work, of course, I continue to earn income through, say, like if you sign up for the Creating Space, that's earning income, but also through the podcast itself. The Hippocratic Collective is another source where there's some profit sharing there, being a part of that company. And so we'll see what that looks like. It's still new and we'll see what happens there. I've also taken on different kinds of speaking engagements, including my very first pharmaceutical company paid engagement. It was still my Creating Space workshop. It had nothing to do with drugs, but a drug company paid for me to give the workshop to a group of specialists. And so I'm officially a pharma shill, and that feels kind of fun. actually, especially in the way I'm doing it, where I'm literally not even recommending a drug. But that was something I had to like think through and think through this, all the socialization of what will that mean? What will people think of me? Like that whole thing, and just letting all of that go and just saying, here are my values. This is why this doesn't violate my values in any way. And in fact, allows the work that I care about to be amplified by a new source of funding. How cool is that? And then the other experiment I'm about to do, I think you'll hear the episode for soon, is I'm doing my first sponsored episode of this podcast. And so to briefly share the story of how that happened, I started using a new AI scribe that I'd heard about, that's specific for family medicine in Canada. I was intrigued by it. I loved it so much that I actually signed up for it and like started paying for it. And then I knew I was going to talk about it on the podcast. I love sharing with all of you what helps me feel more human. And definitely like the AI scribes in general have helped me feel more human because they do some work for me so that I can just connect with patients. And so I knew I was going to talk about this scribe, and that could have an impact on how many people decided to sign up for the scribe, because I know that happened last time I talked about a scribe on the podcast. And so I reached out to the company and was like, hey, would you want to do like a sponsored episode? So I'm going to have the CEO on, who's another family physician, and they are paying both me and Hippocratic Collective in like a shared agreement for that episode and for promoting it a bit on social media. And again, it was like, oh my gosh, does this mean I'm a sellout? Does this mean la la la? But I thought about my values. I thought about my intentions, and it just feels good. It feels like a fair exchange of value, you know? And so I'm trying it out to see how it goes. I don't imagine I'm going to have billions of these sponsored episodes, because I'm only going to do it at times where it makes sense in that same way, where it's something that I use that actually makes my life better and that actually helps me feel more human in healthcare, and then they would want to pay me. So I don't know how often it's going to happen, but it's fun to explore new ways to resource this project, because then it means that I get to then have more resources to make this project better for all of you and for myself. So those are some things that have come out of my relationship with money that I don't think I would have been thinking as intentionally about them if I hadn't had the hard times with money. The last thing that's been sort of a difficult relationship is my relationship with like the news and social media. Obviously, like in every year, but particularly this past year, the world is really worlding. There's so many really horrific, tragic, disgusting, horrible things happening. And sometimes then I get on this podcast and I'm like, hey, let's be human. And sometimes I get this, like, there's this undercurrent of like, oh, you should only be talking about these big issues or like that kind of thing. And if I spend too much time on social media in particular, I can really get in my head about it. And just so you know, I've been thinking about it, and like, when do I talk about my, I don't know, political opinions, about my opinions on different things? When does it matter that I share or not share? Like what feels right for me? And the main thing I wanted to do is resist the urge to just performatively join these kind of conversations to show I'm on the right side of anything. So instead I've, released episodes about like holding space for difference and like having conversations with people where we do have different opinions, like conversations I've had with Jamie on Experiential Anatomy. And like, to me, the way that I've approached it that feels right to me, that feels like I'm in right relationship with myself and my values and my body, is not thinking that I need to say all the right things to stay in the group, the in-group, and to belong. And also being really thoughtful about like what I notice from my own experience and the evidence I see of like what creates impactful change, and which parts of that impactful change do I want to participate in, knowing if I tried to participate in all of it, that would be beyond my capacity. And so, I donate when I want to donate. I sign the petitions when I want to sign the petitions. I mostly don't do those things though, because there's so many things you could absolutely max out your capacity on those things alone. And I just know that that's not my like primary mission, my primary calling, if you will, to use like religious language. I really believe that if I continue to do the work that's in front of me, that is my passion, that lights me up, that will have net benefit, including to all of those things. It'll resource people whose primary passion is, working with overseas conflict, is working with climate change, is working with political unrest. And like, I can support them to support that work. And I've really had to think intentionally about like what my lanes are. And that's been kind of hard, but it's been really good. So that's another relationship that I keep working on. And mostly I just have my social media apps deleted from my phone. And that's great. That feels really good. Some other relationships that I've noticed, I've done a lot of hard work in past years. And though some of it continues to come up, like I've noticed that now I'm really paying the dividends of. One is parenting. So my relationship with my two sons, one who's almost 5. Oh my gosh, my pandemic baby is turning 5 in less than a month. That is so wild to me. And my 7-year-old who can read and ride a bike and all these things. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're learning adult skills. What's happening? This is so alarming and so amazing. I will say that all the work I've done to honor my own capacity, to befriend myself and my body, so then I can hold space for them and their big emotions and their big ideas and their big silliness and actually be present with them. All the work I've done inwards on me is now paying out outwardly in my ability to really be with them and to not put my stuff on them. To be clear, I still very much can get impatient, can get overwhelmed, can put my stuff on them. But like, it is happening with less regularity and less intensity. And I'm just so grateful to my past selves for that. I'm so grateful to my kiddos for being these beautiful teachers to me about what it is to be alive and appreciating the magic of the everyday, because they very much do that for me. Last month, we went and saw fireworks like in a public park for the first time, and just their sheer joy and excitement exuding from every pore at seeing these fireworks. Delicious, scrumptious, just really being able to connect with that and be so grateful for their presence in my life, and watching these two tiny humans become bigger humans, and know that I'm just going to get to do that for as long as I guess the universe says we all get to be on this ride at the same time. I love it. And other things that are highlights is Leo, my younger one's now in junior kindergarten. So single drop off, no more double drop off, both in school, both learning so much. Leo just learned to ride his bike last weekend, which was like the process of them getting so defeated and crying and saying, I can't do it, and then finding their way to do it. It's deeply inspiring to me. It means that then when I'm like, oh, I can't do whatever grown-up thing, I'm like, look at them doing that. I can do this thing. Part of doing hard things is wobbling and falling down. And if they can do that, I can do this. And like, they really are my heroes, honestly, and like deep inspiration. So I've loved my relationships with my kids. And then the other relationship is my relationship with my husband. He's still doing well health-wise, because, the first time I did this, I shared how in that year in 2023, he'd been diagnosed with cancer and had gone through chemo and surgery and everything. He's had clear scans ever since. It still, though, is this like undercurrent that I never really want to forget, not in like a morbid way or dramatic way, but just in a real way of like, there's a version of reality where he's not here with us anymore. And so even when I'm really grumpy at him, I'm like, and he's still here. And I'm so grateful that he's with us. And another thing that really helps that has been the work of, again, like that inner work of caring for myself, of really being in integrity and holding on to myself in relationship with him and being in my lane, including like my lane for parenting, my lane for lifing, and allowing him to be in his lane and knowing he's on his journey of learning how to parent. He's on his journey of, I don't know, whatever, learning how to life. I don't have to pretend or buy the socialized story that I'm supposed to be in charge of him, which is a deeply messed up socialized story that like I think a lot of women have, where they feel responsible to fix their husbands or whatever. Letting all of that go, and that's been like a repeated deconditioning for sure. But it has helped so much. And I can just appreciate the wonderful human he is and actually just love him through it all. And that's been so great. Another way of saying that is I've become less codependent with him. And that is worth doing. Work well worth doing. I have loved it so much. Other relationships in my life, my family. Of course, I'm not going to get into a ton of personal detail because my family stories are their own stories to share, but things happening over this past year that have brought certain members of my family like much closer. And just I have so much love for so many members of my family. I think I have shared on this podcast that I do differ quite a bit sort of politically and religiously than my parents in particular. And I got to actually have like a conversation about that on this podcast with my dad. And that was a really formative moment. Just like all the work it took for me to get to a spot where I would feel capable of that conversation, and a domino effect it had since then of other conversations I've had with my mom and with my sister and other people. I just feel like it's helping move things in a direction that feel right for me. And I'm feeling a lot more capable of staying in my body and staying in myself in their presence. It's an ongoing journey, but like, I think that episode was like a major milestone moment of that. Yeah. And other kinds of family. So like my clinical team, Amy, nurse practitioner who listens. Hello, Amy. I love you so much. And Molly, my office manager, I'm going to give specific shout outs to as two people that it has always been worthwhile for me to invest time and attention into them and into our relationships. And those have been so rewarding to continue to expand over this past year. And just to the rest of my colleagues in general, even if we're at different spots in our like over and or under capacity journeys or different phases of our lives, like there's still so much to connect with them about. And I just so appreciate the humans that they are. My patients, for sure, just so much love for my patients. Actually missing my patients a bit more this year when, you know, there's been times because my resident's been there where she's seeing more of my patients than I am. And there's been things that are kind of cool about that. You're like, ooh, I just get my inbox done. But I'm also like, I miss them. And that's kind of a nice feeling to have, honestly. And it means that then the times the resident's not there, I'm like, hi, how are you? And like, I really feel like quite refreshed to be connected with them. And that's really fun. I've had a chance to do more palliative care this past year, which is, you know, it's wonderful for me and fortunate. It's meant that I've had multiple patients who've been dying on their terms in the community. And so that's been meaningful to help support them in that work. And I really love doing that piece of it within my capacity and within what feels comfortable for me. And that's been really great. I've gotten to do a bit of gender affirming care in my practice over the past year, which I haven't had an opportunity to do before. And I really love being able to do that. And like, there's such great resources in Canada to help you do that and empower you to do that. And I've really loved that aspect. Just relationship with the healthcare community as a whole. So like meeting so many of you at workshops and conferences, meeting so many amazing magical healthcare humans on the podcast, so many great conversations. I'm so inspired by so many people and I get so many things from each of the conversations I have. And I've just had such a good time with everyone I've talked to on the podcast over the past year. And speaking of that, like especially a theme of the conversations I've had recently have been a lot about creativity, because I've been talking to a lot of folks that are connected with Hippocratic Collective. So I've had folks on who are like physicians and published authors, physicians and graphic artists, you know, like, and TV writers, like kind of cool, formal, creative jobs as well as their physician job. And I guess I have one of those too, if you count podcaster as creative, that's one thing that's been a theme of this past year. As you may have recalled if you heard an earlier episode from this year, like my theme for this calendar year is been power. Like last year was pleasure and this one was power. And I didn't even know exactly what I meant by power, but I think what I mean is like power as in magical powers, as in creative powers. Like the most powerful force in the world is the power to create something from nothing. It's the way that we enact change. You know, if we can't be creative, we will continue to just reproduce what's already happened. And so practicing creativity is really connecting us to the most powerful parts of ourselves. Excuse me. And I've just recognized that I've actually been doing this all along, like through the podcast, through the creative ways I try and design my workshops, through social media posts, but I've been doing it more regularly, you know, through music for sure. Like, yes, I learned ukulele so that I could learn as many Taylor Swift songs as possible. But now I play all sorts of songs on the ukulele, and I love singing and kind of developing my voice and learning new ways to use my voice, and learning new instruments. I've started learning a bit of acoustic guitar, though it is not as much fun as ukulele. It hurts your body more. So I don't know if I'll ever fall fully in love with it the way I did with ukulele. But like having that be a routine practice in my life. And then the newest area of like creativity I'm exploring is writing. I've been reading a ton this past year in like a voracious way that's been interesting to observe. Like, oh, why am I so drawn to these fictional worlds? When I had taken somewhat of a break from fiction, was doing a lot of nonfiction, but I read the entire Throne of Glass series, Sarah J. Maas, except for the one book about the boring guy. I did skip that one, the second to last one. I'm forgetting the name of it now. I read a bunch of Emily Henry's, including her most recent one, which was my favorite of hers by far. Some Abby Jimenez, so like some rom-com ones. I reread all of the Hunger Games as well as then the new Hunger Games. So like lots of fiction and dystopian fiction that's actually inspired me to do a little writing myself, actually. I've been doing a little bit of poetry writing ever since I met Padraig and did that poetry workshop, and a little bit of creative fiction writing. And I don't anticipate ever sharing much of it with the world. I have no idea about that part of things, but that's kind of not my business. But it's been really interesting to have this new way of expressing how I see things and what I'm feeling through like different characters. And that's been interesting to explore. So I've been doing this thing, The Artist's Way, which is a book. And there's this thing you do, morning pages, where you like write free form in the morning for a period of time or for a certain number of pages and just see what comes out. And it's been really fun. It's been really exciting. So that's been and that's a new area of like connective tissue. Like one of my spiritual practices, sort of like my pleasure practice. Now I have like creative practices, and it's been opening up new things. And has been making other parts of work that before I would view fun but like tricky, like social media. This past month, if you've noticed, I've been on social media every single day doing a video about creating space and working under your capacity. And it's been just like really, really fun to keep thinking of new ideas to put on there. And it's felt like purely like this creative project. So like being connected with my creativity has given me new energy for something I wanted to do anyway, which was like promote webinars, promote creating space. But now it's feeling less like work I have to think of. It's like, ooh, it's just a whole fun creative project that happens to also benefit this other thing in my life, you know? And I look forward to doing more of that, you know, in relationship with clinical work, however it comes up, however the idea sparks, you know? Yeah, so that's what I wanted to share. Okay, it's only an hour. That's pretty normal for my podcast. The last thing I was going to share was just a little bit of what I'm looking forward to for this coming year. Certainly, like first and foremost, more of everything I already love. More time with my kids, more time with my husband, more time with myself, more time with family, with friends, with my body, with money, with books, like with whatever, with my creativity. I'm looking like the connective tissue, everyday experience of my life. I look forward to living more of that for sure. And then future possible tentpole experiences, I hope. I'm traveling to Nashville in August to meet Jamie for the first time, as well as to meet the Hippocratic Collective folks for the first time, all in one weekend. So it's going to be this like podcasting bonanza of wonderfulness to like meet people in real life. And I've never been to Nashville. I'm really looking forward to it. Getting to do that keynote about conflict at a conference, and just the process of co-creating that has been fun so far, and looking forward to continue to develop new topics that I can find my way of speaking to in a way that I hope is really impactful. Like that's a creative project I always really look forward to. We have some clinical transitions happening in our office, some retirements and new people coming in. I will speak vaguely because it's not, you know, my story to share, but like that's going to be interesting and fun, and continue to bring new ideas and energy to the practice, but also holding space for the grief of saying goodbye to colleagues who've meant a lot for me. So I'm looking forward to it all, including the parts of that are hard, and how that there's an opportunity there for it to bring everybody closer together. A new thing that I don't know exactly what's going to come of it, but just recently I've been looking into doing more training on medical assistance in dying, probably out of my experiences, like my palliative experiences, and knowing there's a bit of a need, and I'm intrigued of doing it in a way that still flows with the rest of my schedule. But I've like signed up for a course that you can do through a Canadian website that's free. And that's like a maybe, but something I'm just speaking out into the universe as I might be doing a bit more of, and really intrigues me about what it brings to our reminder of our mortality and our humanity in medicine and the dignity we can offer people at end of life. So we'll see if anything comes of that. And the last thing I'm definitely looking forward to is a new cohort for Creating Space, the course. I've already got a couple people signed up, which is so thrilling. I would love at least 8 people. I'm speaking that into the universe as well. I know it's a big time and expense commitment, and I just believe so much in the course, and I would love to support people and have them have the experience of having this regular weekly support to create space for their humanity and get to come to the retreat. So if you are intrigued, if you know anyone who you think would be a perfect fit, send them my way, send them to the website, book a call with me. I want to be talking to tons of healthcare humans to just hear your stories and to check if Creating Space is right for you. But I really do believe the right people are going to come my way. And I really look forward to that. So yeah, what a year it's been. 3 whole years of doing this podcast. That is so wild to me. And I don't have any intentions of stopping. I'm not getting any early signs that this needs to fizzle off into the distance. I in fact have a ton of conversations backlog that I still haven't released, and a bunch of podcast ideas I haven't done yet. So still tons of creative juices flowing in this project. And so finally, I just want to take a minute to say thank you so much to everyone who has listened to even a tiny bit of any of these episodes or watched it on YouTube. Thank you to those that have reached out to share how this work has changed your life. Like, it's so meaningful to know that something that has helped me is helping you, and that me sharing it has impacted you in a good way. And so I'm so grateful for those that listen and those who reach out and let me know. And yeah, here's to another year plus, as many as it takes to figure out how to be human in healthcare, I guess. Like, let's see how far we can ride this train. Thanks, everybody. And talk to you next week. I would love to take this work deeper with you. Visit joanchanmd.com today and discover my growing menu of options for restorative medical education to suit your learning needs. I offer one-on-one coaching, customized workshops, and self-study courses that allow you to connect not only with my work on a deeper level, but also with other healthcare humans just like you. So if you want to start humanizing your work in healthcare to a deeper level and do it in community with others, please visit joanchanmd.com and find those options and what fits you and your life today.